So hi, everyone. Welcome to our first Housing Committee meeting for 2024. It is so great to see all of our new members here tonight. I'm really happy that you're here. Francesca Houston is joining us tonight, and I've already asked her if she wanted to make a statement or say anything at the beginning of the meeting during our public be heard section, and Francesca said no. So she's just going to listen in. And so our first item on the agenda is the approval of the December minutes. Now, going forward, everyone will have been at, I mean, you were at the meeting actually, so that's helpful, except for Sabine. So we'll get to this in the procedure section, but generally people have comments and we try to correct them as quickly as possible and keep the meeting going. So does anyone have any corrections on the December meeting?
I'll move that we adopt them.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Great.
And
All in
no,
favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
aye.
Aye. Is that everybody?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye, aye.
If you want to say nay, you can say nay.
I don't want to say nay, but I'm not sure I ever saw the minutes, so I was just kind of abstaining.
Oh, did I thought I attached them? No, you did. They weren't attached.
They might have been and that I missed it, so I'm sorry
Okay,
about it.
that's okay. I think it was the last thing that I attached, so I know there are a lot of attachments. Oh, now Sabina wasn't with us in December, but she was appointed the same night that all of you were appointed. So Sabina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I mean, Deborah approached me after the new year and said, would you be interested? And so I did some research and thought I'd join in. I've lived in Woodstock for only 3 years. So I'm one of those people, longtime people hate. But we lived in another town for 30 years and we were very active in that community. I co-founded a nonprofit education foundation there, which now has given out almost $1 million in a town very much the size of Woodstock. I really believe in housing for everyone, so that's why this appealed to me. And my professional experience was in film and television for many years, but as a often on the business side and in administration. So I'm happy to give it a go and see how it goes. Done a lot of reading this week.
Great.
Thank you, Sabina, for stepping up.
Yes, thank you.
Really happy.
Thank you, Deborah.
All right, so next thing, current business. The first thing, we were just going to review some of the committee procedures. I sent you a document about that. As you know, we meet once a month. It's on the fourth Wednesday of each month. The meetings go for an hour and a half, but if we want to keep them shorter, I'm sure everyone would be happy about that. You also found out this week that I've decided to create these 2 subcommittees so that we can get some work done in between the meetings. So that will mean at least 1 additional meeting during the month. We had been trying to do a lot of our work during the monthly meeting, but I'm not sure it was that successful. So, Deborah?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention when I joined the committee in 2019, we had subcommittees, or shortly thereafter we formed them, and it really did help us to keep everything moving. Of course, that was, then we were hit with COVID and like everything went all over the place. So we had to kind of regroup, but I just really think, I'm really glad that you're reinstating them. I think it really gives everybody a chance to kind of keep things moving forward.
Yeah.
And then engage with each other.
Yeah, I mean, and you're not quite as constrained for time, I think, because it's always been really hard to pack everything into 1 meeting every month. So hopefully that'll work out. When I joined the committee 3 years ago, it was exclusively on Zoom. And we tried to go back to in-person meetings. I remember like the first summer I was on the committee, and then of course COVID came back, so we went back to Zoom, and then we were successful in sticking it out in person starting last June, I believe, May or June. which is nice. It's nice to have in-person meetings. I know some people in the community prefer to have the recordings up on the town website so they can listen in later on, which is understandable. There is a New York State open meetings law that says that all meetings must be open to the public, so we're always open. It does not require that meetings be recorded and posted on the town website or any website. So that is not a requirement. We do need to post our minutes. So if, once we get closer to May, when we'll be meeting in person again, we're gonna have to decide if we want to do both, like record the meetings and post them, also take minutes and post them. It's a lot of admin. So if we decide to go that way, I'm gonna need some help. So I can't do it all. So just putting that out there. And I always seem to have trouble getting into the town Zoom. I don't know what it is. I think they changed the password a lot, so I don't know. Anyway, oh, so the meeting minutes, we all take turns taking the minutes. I left Deborah out of the schedule because she's our alternate now, so that'll be good. Deborah gets a break. If you have any trouble with the months that I've assigned you, just let me know and we can switch things around. People are usually very accommodating. As I mentioned, we circulate the minutes the week after the meeting if we can, and then we post it in the Google Drive, and people can make edits or comments as suggestions in the document. I will send you an invite to the Google Drive this week. And if you have trouble posting, let me know. You can also send things to me and I'll post them for you. After we approve the minutes, then I send them to the supervisor's assistant and they get posted on the town website. So yeah, everything's on the Google Drive. You can poke around in there once I send you the link. Meeting protocol, we try not to interrupt each other. If you want to say something, raise your hand, or you can raise a digital hand, and I'll call on you. And we do follow Robert's Rules of Orders. The Housing Committee was using an app called Slack. Some of you may be familiar with that. And we can decide if we want to keep using Slack or stick with email. There's pros and cons to both. Slack, I'll often forget to check because there's just so many places to check in the world, but.
We just keep it on. Sorry.
And sometimes email, there's like long chains and that gets complicated too, but I suggest we stick with email for now and then see how it goes. Unless anyone feels really strongly about Slack. And then I gave you all the dates for this year, so you can put those on your calendar. Any questions about procedures? Okay, then we'll move on to the reading list. So I gave you lots of things to read. I did not expect you to read all of them. The comprehensive plan was the first thing that was passed in 2018. And that was where our mission was formed basically out of that plan. That the town decided we needed to work on this affordable housing that we don't have. And that's when Bill appointed the Housing Committee for the first time. That was in 2019. So most of the plan isn't about housing, but there is a great deal of it in there. And then I gave you the annual reports. I did not include 2023 because I haven't presented it yet to the town board, but I'll be doing that on February 20th. But I put the previous years in. And then the Ulster County Housing Smart Communities Initiative, also a key thing. This is a really great effort that the county's done. Deborah was on the task force that put this all together. And this is how we're getting our funding for the consultant that we'll be working with this year. So, and then the consultant's proposal. And then I put a lot of other things that are not essential, but efforts that you should know are happening in Woodstock. I asked you to think about one thing that you learned from the reading and then one thing you'd like to know more about. Anybody want to go first?
I will.
Okay.
Good.
Thanks
Well,
for,
I mean, I can't say anything specific, except that the most specific thing I can say is that it left me with it was good to hear what has happened over the years before and sort of see the pace of it. It feels like now we're sort of getting into like the heat of it.
Mhm.
But I also have a million questions. And that's kind of what I wound up leaving with. Like, I have so many questions about what this looks like because it's so obtuse. It's just these sort of architectural ideas of,
Right.
it's like the architecture of the idea. It's not the idea yet. So but that's, I did my homework and that's.
Good. Thank you. Yes, well, we have a lot to figure out. Yes, you're right. Now we're in the thick of it, so.
I had more questions about Ulster County's housing action plan.
Mhm.
I did look at the website. I'm just surprised why I haven't heard anything about it, being that I'm directly in that field.
Hmm.
But lots more questions and
Mhm.
things to learn.
What's one thing that you learned?
Well, I learned that they have this plan of action. I really was questioning because I was seeing all these grants and all these attempts and things they were doing about housing, and I was questioning, well, what are they actually doing? So now I know that they have the actual plan, 5-year plan, more to learn about.
Mhm. Yep. John?
So I guess one thing I learned much more in detail than I had is sort of where we're stepping into the process, the newcomers here on the committee, because so much of the work that's been done was sort of only vaguely familiar to me. And so that was very helpful to learn more about the Woodstock Housing Alliance, to learn about the home share, to learn about the connections to the county, et cetera. So that's not one thing, it's a lot of things I learned, but I feel like I sort of understand now where we are on the timeline better than I did before in terms of what's going on.
Yep.
Um, what in terms of a question, I guess it seems like there's this meeting next Monday with the consultant, and so I tried to think of what this meeting might do to help us get ready for that meeting, and I'm not totally sure about what we're trying to accomplish in that meeting, but it seems like a big part of what the consultant does is help us with communication and messaging and whatnot. And so the questions I have are about, well, what are we trying to accomplish? Like, who is the target for these messages, and what do we try to teach them or tell them? And that's something I would like to learn more about.
Well, short answer, but yes, you're right. Everything's very complicated. Everything we're doing around this issue is complicated, and there's lots of different prongs to everything, and there's no one solution. But we're trying to talk to the whole community, and we're trying to get feedback from the whole community, and we're trying to integrate everything that everyone is thinking and try to reach some kind of consensus, which is a tall task. But that is the idea. John?
But there's certain things that are done, right? Like that Woodstock Housing Alliance. And so I guess I would like to push to think like consensus about what? About the project to use community land to build more housing, or to try to see how, and is the target people who are against this, or is it people who are going to be allies? I just
Mhm.
like the sort of strategy of the communication, I think would be interesting to hear more about, more
Right. I
specifically.
mean, I honestly don't know yet. That's why I'm so much looking forward to this, because I've spent the past 3 years involved in past outreach efforts, but I'm not sure how successful they've been. So working with a consultant who's done this before could be really helpful. these are experts and we're just volunteers. So I think the goal is to figure out what the community wants. If the community wants affordable housing, how do we achieve it? What would the community like us to be doing? Deborah?
Yeah, I think that, I'm sorry, I mean to interrupt if I just add something. Because I think that this is kind of the culmination of like the years that we've worked up to this, where we've been trying on our own to come up with solutions. Like the Housing Alliance idea came up at a housing committee, the home share idea came up at the housing committee, and now these initiatives are on their own. And the zoning, same thing, working on that came out of the housing committee. But what we're really hoping, I think, is to have this conversation with the community that will engage people and gain support for solutions to giving to having solutions for the housing challenges we face, that everybody or more people can buy into and understand. And that's been really hard, just on the parts that I've worked on, is helping people in the community understand. So doing it on our own has been fine, as we've done, but having people who have experience with different communities doing this kind of thing seemed like the timing was really right to have that kind of assistance. And so when we engage with them, I'm sure some of what we're saying right now is going to be part of that initial, the start of our conversation, so they can help us help the community move forward on housing.
I guess that's what I meant by not understanding like what it looks like. Like we've got all these ideas and there is no real focal point, except that we want these things and we want to include the community, which I think is really important. But there's no structure from which to present that. And if we don't have that, then I think it's just kind of like popcorn.
Well, the structure ideally is a housing action plan,
Mm-hmm.
which was a task I was given the first year I was on the committee, but I was terribly unprepared and inexperienced, and there was no possible way I could have written a housing plan. So that's the end goal. And, that's a tough task.
I was going to ask, sorry to interrupt. I had noticed that was referenced in one of the,
The subcommittees.
yeah, or one of the town board summaries. And I was curious kind of because it sounded like there were a lot of sort of documents and resources pulling together in that one plan. And so so it's in progress now. It's just.
It's not really in progress.
Oh,
I tried to write it the first year and realized how little I knew, and that we didn't have any community input into what we should be doing. So, I also was working full time the first more than full time, probably the first 2 years I was on the committee. And last year I was able to, I retired from my career, so I became the co-chair. But last year we were so focused on zoning and trying to support those zoning revisions that we didn't make any progress on the action plan. So that's what we should be working on. Sabina?
Yeah, the first thing I want to say is that in all the reading I did, I feel like you've come a huge way. I mean, you've started with this one committee and there's now all these subgroups doing other work. And for me, the biggest challenge as a member of the community and what I hear from community members is nobody knows who's doing what. And they feel like the housing committee is creating the zoning law, for example, and that it's a done deal. There's no clear messaging about all these subgroups. So I found the reading very useful. And I think the meeting with the consultant, that's the biggest challenge, is how do we explain the housing committee is just big picture, and these other groups like Home Share and the Alliance, which I don't really understand why there's a nonprofit spun off from the committee. That's my biggest question, is about the Alliance. HOTF, is that what it is?
WHA.
Whatever the hell it is. So I looked at the website and I see their mission, but I don't understand really how it's different from the work this committee is doing, unless the committee is just an advisory group based on research and consultants, and maybe that's the role. I don't know, but I think the community is.
Well, the committee is really, yes, doing research, and our intent is to provide options to the town board. Because
But
we
through these
can't-
other groups.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, the town could build something, or they could do it through
Right.
another group. They could
Right.
hire Repco to come in and build another
Right.
thing, you know?
Right.
We're just coming up with options.
Okay.
And the Housing
Okay.
Alliance is complicated, and Deborah can probably explain what a land trust is better than I can, but they can actually develop something too. Housing Committee can't really develop anything. We're just providing options.
Right.
Let me know, Catherine, if you want me to just expand on anything. I know we have limited time, but I'm happy to
Well, we're
jump.
doing okay on time. I don't know. Do we want to pause
Well,
on?
I'll just say so the Housing Alliance is a community land trust. You've heard of the Woodstock Land Conservancy was another type of land trust that preserves land. Community land trusts around the country work on housing, and they can own land, they can build houses, they can sell them, and they're nonprofits, and they keep them affordable. Sometimes they own the land and they sell the houses, or sometimes they lease the houses. There are different ways that, and in fact, maybe at some point having I don't know if the Alliance has like a brochure there. The website's pretty good, but the other housing trust that you had in your readings, the Island Housing Trust from Martha's Vineyard is really good. They're much more established. Ours is brand new, and that's a really good model to look at to understand what a housing trust or a community land trust, same thing, does. And the fact that Woodstock has one just gives us another way of working out housing issues that's more community-based and is not necessarily dependent on government funding. That pretty good.
Yep. Thank you,
Oh.
Deborah. Yeah,
Okay.
good summary. John.
So about the housing action plan, I really, there was this smart initiatives document, and there's all these check marks that you can get that
Yeah.
are related to some of the things we've done, and some of them we haven't, but maybe none of them that we've done using their regulatory structure or whatever.
Mhm.
But when I thought about the housing action plan, this seems like there's so much that's been done. There's been work on short-term rentals. There's been work on the zoning, which is of course in progress. There's been the Woodstock Housing Alliance. There's been the home share. And now there's this project that really hasn't gotten too far, but that's been on the list for a while. That seems like a priority now, which is there community land that could be used for somehow building more housing?
Mhm.
But to me, that like what's left in terms of a plan? It seems like are there other levers that people are thinking about that haven't been pulled, or are there needs to support the things that have been done in a way that's not happening, or the housing action plan, what is it beyond sort of this public land stuff, given
Well,
what's already
that's
done?
that's the main task, or one of the main tasks we'll be working on with the consultant. We really haven't built any new housing for I don't know how many years. Like, can't think of anything that's gone up since Woodstock Commons. So it's up to, that's one of our tasks. What are we envisioning along with the community that should be built or should be created?
Okay, that's helpful.
Is there a property that could be rehabilitated, for example? Or is there something that could be acquired that could be, it doesn't have to be town-owned land, it could be land that gets acquired too. So we have not envisioned that yet. That's our job to do that.
But that's sort of the housing action plan, that part of it.
That is the housing action plan. And then the
Okay.
plan would also be like, okay, if we want to develop all these things or not, maybe we don't want to develop that much, we have to decide along with the community. What's the timeline? Here's the first thing we'll do. We'll build 3 houses on this property, or we'll build 4, apartments on one property, whatever we decide it should be along with the community. And then we say, over the next 10 years, how do we see this unrolling? What's our long-term strategy? That's what the housing action plan should be.
Okay.
One thing to add to our long term,
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, like, the housing crisis really just isn't finding affordable homes. Like,
Mhm.
I looked at the Woodstock house list. I was told to change my terms. The Woodstock house list. I feel like they need supportive housing. I realize Woodstock doesn't have anything like that. Like
Mhm.
Kingston has supportive housing for young houseless teens, people with mental health. We have a lot of that are houseless, and they're not going to benefit from any of the affordable housing that. I mean, I live in Woodstock Commons, and I know that there are people here that can't afford to live in Woodstock Commons.
Mhm.
So they are also making a big part of the crisis. So I think Woodstock should consider some sort of supportive housing.
Mhm.
Maybe Family of Woodstock could take that on. I was going to bring that up to them, but I think there is definitely a need for that, because when I see the crisis, I don't see that we can't afford to live here because we chose to move here. I mean, I moved
Right.
here knowing I couldn't afford to live here, but there's people that live here for their reasons that they are Woodstock and they can't afford, it's because I worked at Cumberland Farms. So I've, learned all the people, and I've seen people that are Woodstock. If you ask about, like Jogger John was here, but
Mhm.
there's people that are Woodstock, and it's not affordable housing that they need because they just can't afford, you know. Because really, what's affordable housing right now? I'm a housing specialist, and it's like a 2 bedroom for 1,800 is the lowest. A
Mhm.
normal person with like a mental illness or an artist who works here to here, they can't afford that, but
Right.
they want to be here.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I just want to keep that in mind that
Yeah,
like
I agree.
that's
And I
also
think,
something.
that's another thing we need to learn from the community, different,
And they put me here to represent the community.
yeah,
I sometimes don't know what you guys are talking about, but they said speak up for the poor people that live here, the
yeah,
people that made Woodstock their home. I've been here 15 years. I had to work here. So that's who I'm representing. If I'm quiet, it's because I don't know what you guys are talking about. I'm willing to learn, but I am supposed to be the voice for the community that I live in.
yes, that's excellent. And we need that. And we need to think about all these different groups of people in our housing plan when we get to that. I mean,
Well,
I
there's
think a lot about seniors, so go
there's
ahead.
also people who are homeowners that are like, one car payment missed away from losing everything.
Mhm.
So there, not, I'm just saying that there's so many levels to the crisis that, I mean, America's unaffordable for almost everyone.
Mhm.
To have $1 billion. And so I don't, like, I like the shape of thinking about people who are actually houseless and supporting them, like creating some kind of shelter system or I don't know what. And
Mhm.
then also, I mean, we also don't want to make it an invitation for more people to come from outside of the community. So like maybe there's a way to use a community center to provide beds or something and
Short
food,
term, yeah,
for people to
I thought
get
of that.
eat or something, because that building's there. And then as far as what is affordable housing? I'm like, if I chop my house up into a lot of apartments, how much can I charge? So I can see if this is even something that I could do. This is me like moving out and I don't know where I go, but like, so I can try and keep my house, if I hack it up into a bunch of pieces and, create 1-bedroom apartments, what is the price of a 1-bedroom apartment? What is affordable?
Well,
And
affordable housing is supposed to be that you're not paying more than 30% of your income on housing.
That's right.
so what do
Like that's the
people
only
make?
way we can
Mhm.
afford.
Mhm.
Right. So what do people make? I mean, who makes
Well,
what?
there's a median income for Ulster County and for Woodstock that it should be based on. That's part of the plan, is assessing the demographics, assessing the area median income, AMI. There's a lot of data that needs to be assembled and
Yeah.
determining those benchmarks. So Rebecca?
Yeah, I totally agree on the need for kind of having that clear data. And I happen to have earmarked that very statistic. Actually, I think it was in the Hudson, the HSCI. And I think just for anyone who wants to know that AMI, area median income, for all counties, including Ulster, annually was 96,000. And that varies. So I don't know. I think it would be great to kind of get these numbers together and sort of try to understand them and what does that mean.
I'm not ashamed to say that I make 32,000 a year and I work full time.
Mhm.
And I have a college degree. I really don't know what else I'm supposed to be doing besides
Yeah.
working more, and then my kids are raising themselves. So,
Yeah.
but I
And-
choose to
and-
struggle so that I can live in Woodstock. Like, please don't get me wrong. I know I could probably go somewhere more affordable, but it's like I understand and I make sacrifices to live here. And I see a lot of people like that. They're artists. They don't. This is their home.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
guess I just did the math at that price, right? So that's $3,000 a month. Like if you're making, I don't make 96,000, I can tell you that right now, not even close. So, and I have a master's degree. Like, who cares, right? It's just not the world we live in today, unless you work and, have like, I mean, even when I was a professor, I did not make that much money. So,
Size of household. So I don't know if Rebecca got into that. So the AMI also relates to size of household numbers
right.
and I don't have the information in front of me, so, to really get into it, but it is complex, and I think understanding the data is a really good starting point for everybody, just so we know what is being looked at as of a level of affordability for a household of varying sizes and in terms of income. Because obviously if you have multiple wage earners in a household, you add that up and you have an aggregate number. And then if you have one person households, one wage earner households, that's a whole different ball of wax. And it's hard.
Mhm.
I guess I'm curious about who we're like the audience that we're providing, who gets affordable housing, gets it, because right now the rents for a house are $3,500, so it sounds like somebody who makes 96 can totally afford a house in Woodstock. Like, that's affordable.
If there's
According
anything in that available in that.
Everybody's putting their house up because Airbnb is terrible.
Mm.
And
That's
so,
good news
yeah,
to me.
the
People are selling their
bubble
houses?
has popped. I'm
Mm.
sorry?
Sorry, Lisa, what are you saying? People are selling their
People are
houses?
renting, no, they're renting their houses. All of them are like 32, 35, 38. That's the going price.
For
For
long-term
2,
rental.
3 bedroom, 2 bath, nice house.
You mean a monthly? Is that a monthly rent?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a kind of a maniac about real estate. I mean, that's what a mortgage costs.
Mhm.
Well,
So,
yeah,
Howard, I'm glad you could join us.
yeah, I'm sorry, I had a hard time getting connected. It took me a while.
I'm sorry. Are you in Florida now?
Yes,
Oh, great.
yes.
Good
Thank
for
you
you.
for coming. I thought you were traveling tonight.
No, the biggest obstacle to affordable housing is the cost to build it. And the only way it's going to be built pretty much anywhere in the country is with subsidies by either the government or, some level of government to subsidize developers and encourage them to build them. And then if they build them, there has to be some kind of assurances that they will be rented at an affordable rate for perpetuity or some length of time. And that's constantly the biggest problem that we're facing, whether it be Woodstock or anywhere else in the country.
Mhm.
well, then I guess
I've seen a solution. I mean, like in California, places like, I mean, they're putting up the tiny home projects. I actually thought Family Woodstock was talking about that and I didn't hear anything about it, but it would be like, an upgrade to what I heard Woodstock has a tent city.
Hmm.
Tiny homes, they really don't cost a lot to throw them up as long as you have the land. You can
Well,
use
yeah,
them.
well, the land is included as part of the cost of building building the affordable housing is to get the land and to afford the electrical, the mechanic, the
Water.
sewer and water, and the building of the building.
Right.
I thought that Martha's Vineyard website was really inspiring. For me, that what they're building there in such a wealthy area for people. And when we say, who are we building for? In my mind, we're building for the people who work here and can't afford to live here. I mean, there's hundreds of people who support this community, and they live in Kingston or Saugerties or somewhere they can afford because they can't afford to live in Woodstock. So to me, that's a big piece of it. But I highly encourage anybody to look at that Martha's Vineyard site if they haven't already. It's like utopia. It just
It
looks amazing.
is. The
what is
quality of
that
the
site?
housing is so
Really?
beautiful too.
It was a link that we were sent as part of our reading materials, and it's about a housing trust that was created on Martha's Vineyard in order to
Oh,
build
okay.
affordable housing for people who
Oh,
live.
okay, yes.
Mhm.
Those houses are not cheap to put up at all. They're
Mhm.
super fancy.
John, were
They're-
you gonna say something?
Yeah, just, Tanisha and Lisa were both talking about who's this for, and
Mhm.
one question I had in reading through the materials is it seems like Woodstock actually has, if I understand it right, two complexes, because this is kind of embarrassing, but there's Woodstock Meadows and Woodstock Commons, and those are different, right? And that probably is unique, in a town this size, but maybe it's not. But my question is, can we learn from those two complexes where the needs are? Like what are the kinds of solutions that they're helping with, and what kinds of demands on their space are they unable to accommodate? And is it families of four who are working in the town? Is it young single people who are working in the restaurant service? I'm just like brainstorming for ways to understand, how do you understand what the problem is? And I'm wondering if they have information about demands that they're unable to meet, and if that's useful in our thinking about where the demands are. Because you can kind of make it up, but part of the problem is because there's no housing, the people aren't here to ask, if there was housing, would you be here? And so I think we need to be thinking about what are the unserved populations that we
Single people.
have, and how do we figure that out? And I guess my one idea so far is, can we learn from the people who are wanting to get into the complexes we have but can't get in there?
Yep, I can tell you it's single people. This is mostly families. There are no one bedrooms here. Um, and that upsets people. You can't live here unless you got kids. And
In
so the need is for
Woodstock
single
Commons.
people without kids here at Woodstock
Mhm.
Commons.
Yes. Lisa?
There are so many, sorry, it's the new puppy. He is very sensitive to sound. I'm gonna get a thing. Anyway, there are so many, like behind Tinker, the movie theater, there's like this kind of motel looking thing. It's just a building, and I guess they're efficiency units, but they've been abandoned, or I don't know what's going on there. There's nobody
Sure.
in them. And so I actually just called a realtor to find out what's going on with those, because they're just sitting there, and there's a few of those things around. And then also, I mean, there's so many homes that are just sitting there. So instead of building more things, I feel like if we could just use what's discarded and reinvent it,
Mhm.
and make efficiency apartments, because there's no reason that you need to have, there's great ways to do tiny apartments
I think,
and maximize
some,
space.
when we get to coming up with actual sites and projects, I think we'll be looking at a mix of things. Like be looking at some small units for one person.
Going on about, will you go see?
And then we'll be looking at homes for young families, and we'll be looking at, housing for seniors who want to downsize and get out of their houses that are too big for them now. So those are all things to think about and to come in our exploration of what the town wants and what the town needs. And I think I'm hoping that the survey we'll be doing with HR&A will enlighten us on some of these things. And also the focus groups we'll be having. So.
And then incentives for people to want to provide this. 'Cause, I mean, I have a friend who's a Airbnb host and they've got a luxury property. And she's freaking out because she's like, are they telling me that I'm gonna have to take one of my buildings and make it affordable housing? I
No.
got annoyed with her about this conversation, but like,
Okay.
I think a lot of people are worried that this means that if they have an accessory building, they have to provide housing. So I think there's a lot of challenges that need to be ironed
Well,
out.
I think we, as a lot of people said, we haven't communicated enough. We don't know how to communicate correctly. Like, we have a lot to fix in our messaging, and I'm really hoping the consultant will help us with that. So, I mean, I have neighbors who are like, well, what are you doing on the housing committee? We don't really know what you're doing. I'm like, well, we have a newsletter and we post on social media, and it's not enough. So we have to figure out how to fix that. All right, I think we should move on now. The next thing we were going to talk about are the subcommittees. And so to work along with the two tasks that the consultant will be working with us on, I wanted to form one committee that was about outreach, and then one committee that was initially to talk about potential sites for housing and potential buildings that we might want to suggest could be converted or rehabbed for housing. And that would feed into, that subgroup would feed into the housing action plan eventually. So, you know, I think outreach is, it's pretty clear what you'll be doing. You'll be working with the consultant initially to figure out who these community stakeholders are and how they should be included in the focus groups. And then we'll be needing to organize all of these people. So once we figure out who they are, we're going to have to set up these meetings. And I don't know, we'll find out on Monday, are these in person? Are they on Zoom? I'm not sure how it'll work. And then they're going to be working on this community engagement plan that we'll be reviewing and giving feedback. We're going to be reviewing the housing survey. And they're also going to be constructing a housing website for us. So we'll have input into all of that. You need somebody, at least one person, to help with social media posts. I haven't been doing a great job. We've only put 2 things up this year so far. So, Tanisha, you want to do social media? No, I think some people are frozen. The monthly newsletter, we were trying to do it every month last year, but we'll see how that goes. We use this platform called MailChimp. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. Rebecca's nodding her head. Oh, good. I'm so glad you're familiar with it.
I used it many moons ago, but I'm sure
good.
it hasn't changed that much, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah, but we need people to help write the content for that and help pick the images. And, you know, I'd like to make the newsletter shorter, and I have some ideas about how to make it look more welcoming, I think.
Who gets the newsletter? Is there an email list?
Yeah, we have an email list. We have about 300, maybe 300 to 400 people signed up, which isn't a huge amount. So
where can you sign up for that? Is that on the town website or on the Facebook page?
Occasionally we'll put things on the Facebook page, you know, if you want to sign up, write to housing@woodstocknewyork.org.
Okay.
And then when we go, sorry, Deborah.
No.
Or when we go to in-person events, like when we have a table at the library fair, we have a sign-up sheet. At all of our community events last year, we had a sign-up sheet, so we got a lot of names through that way.
I'm just thinking putting it on the town website, a sign up link
Yeah, that's a good idea.
on our page on the town website, which
Right.
I hope someday they'll get a big grant to update, but it is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And that could be right there, so
Mhm.
that might be helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Because, and then we need, there's a lot of little granular details, like last year, Susan and I, the co-chairs, were the ones that went through the housing at woodstocknewyork.org email, and wrote down all of those email addresses and sent them to Urena, who was doing the newsletter. So, I think we can distribute some of those tasks so that the chair people aren't doing them.
Yeah.
So that's what we need help with. Then there's the in-person events. And then, once we have this community engagement plan and we start to formulate our housing action plan, we'll, this outreach committee will be reinforcing what we're doing through our messaging and our outreach. So that's the main task for that. So that's always ongoing. And then the housing action plan subcommittee, as we discussed, we'll be talking about town lands. We'll be looking for other properties that maybe could be redeveloped. Anything and everything. We need all the ideas about what could possibly work. Lisa?
Do we have a mission statement? Is there like a brief statement with that could be part of the sort of like what we do and who we are and what we represent? Just some kind of outline that would.
We had a longer statement that was from 2019 and I tightened it up and rewrote it. And when I sent in all of your names, was that last week? When did you, or was it 2 weeks ago? So if you check out the housing committee page on the town website, we have a mission statement there.
Okay.
And you guys will see all your names on the town website, very official. So, so if we can revise that, if you don't think it suits the bill, but I think it's a little bit closer to what we're doing now.
Thank you, Rebecca, for posting all these links while we're talking. That's really
Happy
useful.
to. Yeah, and for those of you that have their chat on the side, as we mentioned, links and things, I'm pasting as I
great.
can,
Thank
just
you.
so you can have them at your fingertips. Sure.
Oh yeah.
Like real time. It's pretty cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Look, wow. Here's the housing committee. Awesome.
Oh look. Oh yeah, there it is.
I found reading the comprehensive plan, even though it was long and dense, it was very useful. Of course, it's a little out of date, but it made it very clear, especially in the housing sections. And I printed those sections out just so I could read them again about why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
I found that useful. Anyway, do you want us to tell you what we want to do? Do you want to
Yeah, that
follow?
would be great.
What do you want to do?
You want to just go around and
Yeah.
I'll go first because I don't want you guys to give me something I can't do. Like I can't do any tabling. My job makes me do this at least twice a month. But I can probably do the social media. At our last meeting you asked and I was like, no, I stay away from social media, but I just rejoined. So
okay. All right, great. So you'll be part of the outreach committee. And can you, well, we have to figure out how we're going to meet. So we'll get to that part. First, let's sign up for the committees and then we'll try to figure out when we're going to meet. Howard?
I'd like to help with the Housing Action Plan Subcommittee.
Yep.
Me
Are
too.
there 3 things now? Or is the site plan research part of the action plan?
Yeah, it's part of that. It's sort of going to be part of the foundation for the housing action plan. John?
So I'm much more interested in the housing action plan and be interested in working on that. But I also, some of the stuff you were saying for the communications, I have a lot of experience with, not some of it, not at all. I don't know anything about social media, for example, but doing surveys and organizing focus groups and stuff. So my preference would be to be on the housing action plan committee, but to help the other committee whenever that was useful
Okay.
to.
That would be great. I mean, like when we have events or, focus groups and things, we need everybody. When we had those 2 big community meetings last year, everybody was there, you know, putting up chairs. Right, Howard?
Yeah.
A lot of fun work, putting up chairs, setting up tables, Deborah had the worst easels ever for our workshop
Yeah.
meeting.
We've taken them to the transfer.
But it all worked.
Yeah, right.
It all worked in
They're
the end.
gone.
I'd like to be on the Housing Action Plan Subcommittee.
Okay. Rebecca?
What if I can help with like, I mean, maybe I'll have visual ideas for social media. I'll jump in.
Okay.
Am I the last to go, or Sabina, have you
No,
gone
I
yet?
haven't gone yet either. I was also interested, I'm actually more than the action plan. I'm very interested in researching sites and seeing what the practical applications are of this. But given my background and that nobody else has said they'll do it, I guess I'll do some outreach.
Thank you.
But I'm not doing it alone.
Oh, well, I'm gonna do everything, so.
I was gonna say something else. Never mind. Go ahead, Rebecca.
All right, so it looks like I'm not necessarily a tiebreaker per se, but I see Tanisha and Sabina on the outreach, and then Howard, John, and Lisa on housing action plan. And then I guess Catherine and Deborah, you sort of gonna be stretched between the two.
Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely comfortable with, you know, what the housing action plan is doing, looking at data, financial stuff, etc. But I will happily join the outreach committee, because I've definitely been very involved in some, you know, change management and change communication efforts in
Great.
my roles in the past, and I definitely see it's a big issue that we want to be on top of and present our mission well to the public. So I will join that, but happy to jump and lend help to the other committee. So
Wonderful.
Catherine, can I ask a favor? Could we do,
Sure.
could everybody just do 10 seconds on what they do or what their background is? I just don't know what
Okay.
anybody's
Oh,
skill
yeah, because you didn't get to
is.
see the other well, actually, no one saw the other applications except for Howard and Deborah.
Right. No. So I'm just curious what everybody's background is. I've heard a
Yeah.
little bit as we've talked about communities, but I think
Mhm.
committees, but it would help us all to work together if we knew a little more about each other.
Rebecca has an MBA, I learned in her application. That's very
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah, thanks. I guess I'll kick it off. Yeah, kind of a diverse background. You know, I've worked in arts management and nonprofit and outreach earlier in my career, and then most recently with an educational company as a project manager, working with universities and faculty to kind of convert their, you know, curriculum to an online medium. And so, you know, I've worn the hat of a project manager. Also have, you know, worked on some data analysis projects as well. So I'm good with the business side of things and financial aspects, but also, you know, great with writing and proposals and communications as well. So those are kind of a lot of different, I think, strengths that I can bring to this.
Wonderful. John, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm a political science professor, and within political science, very sort of on the quantitative side of things. I teach game theory and I've taught statistics, and yeah.
Cool.
Interesting.
Lisa?
I am a professional artist, former professor, and now a house resurrectionist, I guess. I tend to pick out houses that nobody wants and try to bring them back together. And now I'm trying to figure out how to merge it with maybe creating some of me being the person that makes affordable housing. I don't know. But I've worked as a designer. I've also worked as a political activist. I've a youth organizer. I was a campaign organizer. Done a lot of different things, event planning, you name it, I've done it. But yeah, so I mean, wherever I'm useful, I'm happy to help. But I really like the idea of making something special that works, you know. That's the cool part about being here.
Great, awesome. Tanisha?
Well, I feel like I should be going back to school or something, but I just got my loans down, so I am just my first job as a mom. I got 3 children. As I stated in the beginning, I feel kind of like I should be in this committee because I am a product of this committee's baby. I was the first resident to move to Woodstock Commons. I've been living here since day one. I'm raising 3 children here. My daughter's about to graduate and go to college. I have a son who just started high school, and I have a toddler who just started pre-K. So I represent every level of a parent in this area. I'm also a housing specialist full time. I work for the Resource Center for Accessible Living. We basically provide, we're like Section 8 for the people who get dismissed by Section 8, people who are in the nursing home. Believe it or not, a lot of people are in the nursing home because they have nowhere else to go. So that's also called houseless. So my program has been going on for 6 years. We move them into the community. So I know the issues that, like, our biggest one is accessibility. Like, there's apartments, but they're all on the 3rd floor. People in a wheelchair can't get them. And they shouldn't be sitting in a nursing home 4 or 5 years because they have nowhere to go. So that is my job. Um, I'm also in the home ownership program with RUPCO. So I'm also trying to be a homeowner. It's taken me really long because I have student loans and I want to be in this area. So I put myself, I set high, even though I know it's going to be hard. I know I'm going to have a crazy mortgage and how long it's going to take, but I need to be in this area. So I just represent the people here. I worked here in Woodstock for about 8 years at Cumberland Farms. So I know everybody. I never seen most of you guys. I mean, besides Mrs. Richard Houston, like they're kind of famous to me, but I just am here to represent the people that live here and struggle. Like, our first meeting, my car broke down. So I had to get up that hill in the dark and it was freezing. And I'm like, there's no street lights. They don't want people walking around, I'm guessing. Like those little things. And I can tell you every little wrong thing about Woodstock Commons. I watched from the very beginning, all the meetings, the fighting. I don't know if you guys know Angela. I live right next door to her. She works at Woodstock Town and she was at all the meetings. So I am just trying to be the voice for all of them because now that's sort of my profession. And that's all. I didn't go to school for a long time, but I still owe 15K. I just have an associate's in business. I mean, I was going towards human resource, but I was told in the midst of it that I care too much. Like my heart would be broken about too many things and that I should just, go towards business where I don't have to have my feelings in it. But obviously, I just like helping my community and my people. So this is where I am.
Thank you. Howard, I don't think you've met Sabine, or maybe you have, but.
I'm an architect. My career was in Chicago at a larger firm, but I left and came to New York, which was my birthplace up in the city. And I'm living in Woodstock. I'm actually Bearsville, which is part of Woodstock, and I'm an architect working as a sole proprietor. And I'm also like to fix things and know how they work. That's what I do.
Great. Okay, so how should we figure out how to meet? Does everyone prefer to meet at night? Or are there any options during the day? I'm wondering.
For me, night is better.
Yeah.
Nice.
At this fight, you're talking about keeping the 5:15
Well,
meeting
I'm
time?
talking about the subcommittees because we're gonna have,
Oh,
the
the subcommittee.
subcommittees need to meet in between the monthly meetings.
Right.
I
Well,
guess
I'm
if you have-
flexible depending on who else is in the committee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm flexible.
Well,
maybe we should just have emails between each of the subcommittees to figure it out.
yeah, that's probably true. See if I could find that program that Kai uses, that when to meet scheduling.
yeah.
program. That's
Hmm.
kinda
Yeah, he
cool.
would send that.
The
to me.
one called, it's that poll, was it doodle poll or
Oh,
something?
yeah.
We've used that for the film festival.
Okay,
Trying to. It's a very useful tool.
okay. Yeah.
Sabina, what is your background?
I'm sorry, you came in, I had to do it at the beginning, so I didn't
Oh, I'm
repeat
sorry.
it. But I worked in film and television for many years. I've lived in Woodstock for 3. I was a production executive and producer, and I now am retired and really enjoying my life here. And I volunteered I do a lot of volunteer work at the film festival, which is gonna be great this year, 25 years. And I drive Meals on Wheels and do a few other things. So, and I deliver to Woodstock Commons every week, Tanisha. So I know a lot of people there. Wonderful people who need food.
Yep, I've seen you.
Oh, you've seen me? There you go. See, now you have seen me.
That's great. All right, well, is there
Did I
any,
hear something's happening to Woodstock Commons? Is something
Like what?
changing? I don't know. I heard something.
Woodstock
Oh,
Meadows.
Woodstock Meadows.
Woodstock Meadows is losing its affordable status.
Losing it?
Yes,
Ah.
because being.
Never was
purchased-
affordable.
Well.
That's
it's
the one behind the post office, right?
correct,
Yep.
right. So when people, so it's because the land, it's been purchased, when it was built, it was funded. The funding required it remain at a certain affordable level for 30 years. Those 30 years are up.
Ah,
The family is, the estate of the people who built it are selling it to somebody who's not keeping it affordable. So we're gonna lose those.
that's too bad.
And I have friends and have known people over the years who've lived there, and it's been a godsend.
Mm.
So it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Rebecca?
I was just gonna ask, because, you know, there's a lot of talk of things like that happening, and I was just curious, Deborah, is there any publication that's like talked about this, or a way that we can kind of keep abreast of developments like that? Because I hadn't heard of that, but I'm curious to stay abreast of it.
Yeah, on this particular instance, I first heard about it from a former checkout, and appreciate this from Mark in the
Right.
who was the former assessor where you used to work, and that there was and we had that on a list, but we were hoping that Rupco or somebody would step forward, but the owners didn't want to sell, that they basically wanted to go to the open market.
That is too bad, because a lot of people, Woodstockers, have been living there for years.
That
And I
happened
can't
over-
imagine what they're going to do now, really.
Yeah.
Right, they're not, yeah, so they're not gonna be, I don't believe they're gonna be evicted. If
No.
they're living there, I think when they leave or pass or whatever,
And the rent,
then the rent will go. I believe
Mhm.
that's the way it's gonna go, but in
Okay.
terms of, you know, one of the things, and this will come up, I think, with our messaging, and it's something that I'm hoping we'll do with outreach, where, you know, I'm happy to jump in where I can on that. We have Hudson Valley One. We have had articles in there. We actually even had, I think, at least one point of view piece, but I think there are ways that the HV1 can help us to keep abreast of these issues. Unfortunately, I think some of this stuff you just find out about through word of mouth, and we can help each other stay informed. But that is a good question, even for the consultants, like how do we know what's going on with housing? I mean, when we were doing the zoning updates, we talked to a lot of different people. We even talked to realtors to just keep abreast of just to find out, you know, what's going on. And that might be something that this committee wants to look into. It's just an idea.
Okay, great. Anybody have anything else? All right, shall we make, oh, John?
Who will organizing the subcommittees? Will that be you or?
Yeah, unless someone else would like to do it.
No, I was just,
I'll do it.
okay.
I'll get it going anyways.
Yeah, get it
Yes,
going.
Francesca.
I just wanted to give some information. Lisa, you were talking about that row of buildings of sort of like efficiencies behind the movie theater. They belong to Nancy Adler. If you want to know a name, that's who they belong to.
Does she own the movie theater as well?
Yeah,
I think she still does.
still does. She does.
And then she also
She's-
owns Alba's too, because we did look and it was
Yes,
same person owns all those buildings.
that's right.
It looks like people lived there at one time.
I think they did, and then as you said, it sort of fell into disrepair, I think, and they, last I saw, they seemed kind of dilapidated.
Mhm.
It
Well,
might be a
that's
good
something we should put on our
site.
list,
Mm,
things to look at.
Mhm.
right.
I feel like
Okay.
I saw another one just like it. Where is that?
Lisa,
There's
we're
another-
gonna adjourn now. But
The
we can
old
talk about this
laundromat?
in the site committee, the Housing Action Plan Committee.
Mm.
All right, a motion to adjourn?
I motion that we adjourn.
Second?
Okay.
Okay, oh, Rebecca, I forgot to thank you for taking notes. Super
problem.
appreciate that, being brave,
absolutely.
first meeting.
Hopefully they're good. Don't
I
thank me
think
yet.
I think Rebecca should do everything. Just take all the notes, give us all the
Everything.
links.
No, you'll have to take notes.
I'll be behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I think
All
this
right.
is a great start to the.
Night,
new-
everyone.
Yes, this is a great meeting.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you so
meeting.
much, everyone. Yep.
Night.
take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.